Lezlee Peterzell-Bellanich is an author and organ transplant advocate. Her book, Saved by a Stranger, was inspired by her real-life experience when her husband was in desperate need of a liver transplant. After his life-saving surgery, Lezlee is now an advocate for support groups for transplant patients and believes her book gives hope to all of those who are waiting for a transplant. Welcome to the iWoman Report, Lezlee.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, for having me. And this is such an important topic, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. You know, it is such an important topic, and I remember when you were going through this battle. We actually are neighbors. We've been in an exercise group for many years for women up in Rockland County, New York. And to see you and to see your resilience and to see how strong that you have been through all that you've been through, you and your husband, Rob, when he was in desperate need of a transplant. I don't know how you do it, but I just want you to know I have admired your courage and your determination from afar. It's really been very admirable.
Oh, thank you. Well, we all do it. When you're in this situation, you just have to move forward. That's all you can do.
Yeah. Now, tell me what inspired the book. I know your husband was really ill at one point and suffering and desperately waiting for a transplant. And it's one of those things that I would imagine you know nothing about until you find yourself in this situation.
Exactly. Well, we had a little bit of lead time in terms of knowing that eventually he would have a transplant. And my book not only talks about our story, but I've interviewed other people that I met in the support group we were in. But some people, aren't aware that they're sick at all, have fatty liver disease, for example, and then boom, their liver can't process the toxins. In our case, 2 years after we were married, Rob was not feeling well. He was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis at the VA hospital, I might add. And a young VA doctor, his liver counts were high. And so he was, after many tests, diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder in 2003 called primary sclerosing cholangitis. I couldn't even say it or pronounce it. All I knew was it was affecting his bile ducts within the liver, causing inflammation over time. So we knew that there was no cure, that he would be on medication to slow down the process. However, he would eventually need a liver transplant. 18 years with this knowledge, and it was sort of like a shadow over our head. When you have some kind of catastrophic news like that, you react in different ways. Rob is a Virgo, type A, and he was like, we got to go. We built a business and we were doing everything at warp speed to get to a point where he felt that, I don't know, he could leave me somewhat. That's what he was thinking in his mind. So after my mother passed away, and I was very close to her, I noticed that the drug he was on at the time that had slowed down the PSC was not working anymore. And he was getting very jaundiced. I could see the concave in his body. He was fatigued. He could barely, the muscle mass wasting was happening, and all the signs of liver failure. Even confusion from the ammonia in the brain, just a little bit with him, not a lot like some other people I've spoken to. But we knew after speaking to doctors, first we were on the wait list here in New York at Montefiore Hospital. But that's when we really knew, oh my gosh, it's not as easy as we thought to get an organ in New York. I mean, who would have thought? We're New Yorkers. Everybody should be signing up to be organ donors, but it wasn't happening. It's not happening. In fact, New York is 46th percentile in the country of organ donation registrations, which is not good. So what that eventually meant was the doctors said he would have to get so sick to be the scores from 0 to 40 that they suggested a living donor, meaning to find someone to give part of their liver, which is not an easy ask. I mean,
right. And
very hard.
And could that be a family member? Were you tested?
I'm not the same blood type. Blood type is everything with organ donation. Everyone should know what their blood type is. And that is number one. And number two is body mass. In other words, a liver is a fascinating organ that can regenerate. So if you are a match, which we did have two people willing to go through the testing, it didn't work out. They test for everything. You know, they don't want to risk two people's lives. And long story short, Rob said, Les, I'm going to die in New York. I know it. We have to move temporarily. So he started looking and researching, and Rob's a numbers guy. And he said, you know, I wouldn't take my high-end car to any dealership. Why would I not? If I want a liver transplant, I want to go where they're doing the most of them. So the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville became our transplant center. So we were able to, he moved there temporarily, October 2019. And the plan at that time was I would go back and forth. He had a friend sort of as his step-in caregiver, but they will not transplant you unless you have a caregiver responsible, you know, to be with you and to learn everything there is about organ donation so that you can take care of your loved one. So the education was amazing. But while he was down there, he was lonely, he was scared. I said, you've got to get involved. Everybody told me there's a great support group that Mayo Clinic provides once a week. So he began going on Tuesdays at 11. It changed his life. And then when I went down, I heard the stories that were just unbelievable success stories that people were going through. And I just learned so much. And they were so helpful to us and so inspiring. And when COVID happened, March 2020, we all, myself and my two children, River and Sky, who at the time were in, 5th grade and 8th grade. And we just took the last flight out in Newark, right before they shut down the airlines. We went to St. Augustine, where Rob had gotten us a condo. It was beautiful. And it was just, we were on lockdown. And the kids had no one, and it was awful for them.
Right, because they couldn't, and lockdown meaning because he couldn't be exposed to anything at that point, right? He had to stay, his immune system was weak.
Well, to be honest, I was more worried about him getting COVID because they wouldn't. I thought, I wasn't as scared of COVID itself. I was scared that it would prevent him from getting the transplant.
Sure.
And it was just a different mentality.
Right. So he ended up, how long did it then take for him to get the surgery?
Good question. Well, in New York, we were waiting on the list 2 years, and it was ultimately 11 months that he waited in Florida, but he was called twice. And call that a dry run, where you're called for transplant and you're there, they're prepping you for surgery, you're nervous, but you're excited. And then once the organ gets actually flown in from wherever it's coming from, ultimately the doctors have to test it and make sure it's 100%. And in 2 cases, they were not happy with that organ and they weren't going to risk putting it in Rob. The called off.
That must have been so nerve-wracking.
It was.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell me about, he did eventually get the liver transplant. He found a donor, and I saw a picture of him just even on the back of the book, and we'll pull it up, where it's night and day to see Rob before, when he was not doing so well, to after he got his liver transplant, and he just looks amazing, healthy and vibrant and happy.
You know, Kathleen, when I was thinking about this before the interview, that 3 years ago was really when I started writing this book. And I needed to write it for myself to keep my mind positive. My blood type is B positive, and I needed to be positive.
Oh, I love that. That could have been the name of a book too.
Be positive, and I had to stay focused. My kids were, depressed. The world was depressed.
Sure.
Isolated, and they don't know what to expect, but I just knew it was going to work out. And at the end, towards the end, Rob was just like about to give up, and I said, no, we're here. We're staying the course. You've gotten called twice. That's a good sign. It's just a matter of time. And it wasn't just me. It was all of our support group members. You see, we really, I wish we could have a support group for everything, for parenting, yes. Anything, but especially for transplant, because
yes.
it's a tunnel, and it's a door that you really don't know what you're going to expect when you walk through.
Yeah.
Once you've gone through it, it's our job as families and as recipients to pull the other people through. I mean, it's not just me. We all feel this incredible sense of, we got a second chance. What are we going to do with the rest of our time? Because we're all just passing through on borrowed time.
That is so amazing. So the book is actually a chronicle of not just you and your family story, Rob's story, but of other patients that you met along the way?
Yes, I wanted to highlight other types of liver disease like hepatitis, fatty liver, like I said, non-alcoholic cirrhosis, other than a lot of people might think you just get liver disease if you're an alcoholic, which, yes, that can ruin your liver, but there's many other reasons for. Now, I focused on liver and kidney because that was the group I was in, but the experience, I think, of waiting on any organ is very similar, and the anxiety, and not everybody does make it. And by the way, just because you've had a transplant doesn't mean, oh, everything's great. You know,
Right.
You're on immunosuppressant drugs. Rob takes 9 a.m., 9 p.m. That alarm goes off. And I always have drugs with me back up, because if we're out, he's got to take them exactly at the same time.
Wow.
So it really bonds you as a couple, as a family. And, I also really wanted to understand the process of transplant. Like, who controls this? How does it work?
Right.
We had a lot of time during COVID to think about these things. Our business shut down. I mean, that was the.
Well, liver disease found the perfect advocate, I have to say. I lost my father to liver disease, and he did have cirrhosis, and ultimately it turned into liver cancer. And at the time, they said that he was not a candidate for a transplant. And it was devastating. I watched my mother go through that, and as a family, going from hospital to hospital, from Pennsylvania to Sloan Kettering to, just trying to, just desperately looking for answers. So thank you for writing this book, Saved by a Stranger. I want to encourage everybody to follow Lezlee and her journey through this. You also have is it a podcast that you also do around this, or is it just a support group that you have? That
I have a website, Lezlee.com. Once a month I was hosting Meet a Transplant Stranger, where we do someone. But right now I'm interested in advocacy to change legislation, because I'm trying to use what we went through with insurance, with UNOS, United Network for Organ Sharing, the wonderful regulatory organization that really tries to make it as fair as possible. And I want people to know that maybe UNOS has gotten some press right now that is, let's say, critical. Without UNOS, where would we be? I mean, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We could modernize technology. We can do a lot. But I have to say that this organization is incredible, because it is a very, very complicated system to match the right organ at the right time in the right person.
Absolutely.
And that's all those moving parts.
Yep. So before we go, I want to give a little plug for organ donation as well. And what can you say to people to encourage them to check that box off, sign up to be an organ donor?
What would you do if someone you knew and loved needed an organ? Without organs, there's no transplantation. They're hand. And if you need something, then you should be willing to give. And by the way, your body is a vessel, and religions support this, because it is the right thing to do to try to save someone's life. And everybody has that capacity. And like I said, the chances that'll happen are very slim, but why not check that box?
Lezlee, thank you. Thank you, and continued blessings to you and Rob. I'm so happy that everything worked out in such a positive way. Continue to fight to be an advocate. I think we need you. Everyone, make sure you pick up a copy of Saved by a Stranger, and you can check out Lezlee at lezlee.com, but that's LEZLEE.com. All right, thank you so much, Lezlee, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. you.